Hello, ZKC. I'm Austin Jenkins, an instructor and the current facility engineer at the time of recording for the virtual ZKC RTAC. This is the second video in a series about the different radar clients and some of the fun bits of functionality and other things that you can accomplish with them that just go beneath the surface. Opened up right here, we got a basic stars display for Wichita. And in this video, I'll go in depth about stars in general, and then cover some local control and approach specific things. Let's go ahead and get a file loaded up here. All right, so right here in front of us, we have a basic scope setup for Wichita. There's not really a whole lot going on here. Just the absolute basic. You can work traffic on this however you like with a couple of video maps turned on, and you should be able to work it fairly well. But also for everyone's individual needs, it may not be the best. All right, I'll get traffic loaded up here. Let's go and get connected. So whenever you connect, there are several menus that you'll see that pop up on the scope. In the top left here, this is your system status area. In this list, you'll see things like the current time in Zulu, the primary field's altimeter, which in this case is Wichita, your radar client status. In this case, we're inactive. We'll go and activate the session, and it'll show OK, OK, and not applicable. The radar site mode, which in CRC is forced on the fused set, which gives you 3 mile standard separation and 1 second updates for each target. The scope range from the top to the bottom, the PTO length, which we'll get into later, which is basically like the vector lines as described in the ASD video. Your altitude filters on this line. Below that, you can set general status text, which we'll go into later, and then individual airport altimeters for each of your fields within the airspace. Down here below, you'll see it as you type is your preview area. This is where you'll input all of your commands and other general data entry things as necessary with stars. Moving down, you see the Wichita Tower list, which you'll see whenever you have tracked aircraft inbound to primary airports such as Wichita. After a little bit, or within a certain distance, they should show up in that menu. Moving up here to the sign-on list in the very top right, it shows the position you're signed into and the time you logged on. There will probably be future updates to this as CRC progresses, and I'll either update the video or update the description to detail any changes to that. The flight plan menu gives a list of any proposals or currently tracked aircraft inside the airspace. The number on the right is their beacon code. Number on the left is their number in the flight plan list. And if you have more than the maximum field length, which is 6, it'll tell you that there is more up at the top. Moving down is the co-suspend list. Suspended tracks, you'll see if somebody descends below radar coverage away from an airport, or so occasionally if they disconnect or some other issue occurs, whether it's bad connectivity. And you'll see in the data block, which I'll try and show off later, there will be a CST that appears in the altitude field, and the block will just kind of track for a moment, then eventually disappear, and it'll be coasted in that list there. Moving down to the VFR list, this will show any tracked or proposed VFR aircraft in the airspace. It's not the most useful of lists, although it is there if you need it for whatever reason. And then the LACA/MCI field down here. This will show any active low altitude alerts which are not yet simulated, conflict alerts, or mode C intruders, which is when an untracked aircraft is in conflict with a tracked aircraft. And we'll get into the different alarms and what they mean later. For now, let's go and start up at the top of the display bar. Top left is very simple. Your range. To change it, you'll click on it and you can scroll to whatever you desire. Place center. When you click that button, you can click somewhere on the scope and it becomes your new center. And if you click that off center button, you'll go back to the middle. Range rings here. You scroll this and it changes the distance value of your range rings. For example, 5 is 5 miles, 2 is 2 miles, and then 10 miles, 20 miles. And with that, place range rings is the same thing as place center. You can put the range rings wherever you want, or you can center them like so. Moving into maps, the first 6 maps here are called the DCB or display control bar maps. They're usually 6 primary maps that, deal with either base airspace configurations, MVAs, MOAs, or just general information that may not be needed all the time, but in the event of a quick reference, you can pull it up there. For the example here, we'll go ahead and say this is a South Flow airspace config, so we'll hit the South Flow map or map number 2. There's multiple ways you can go about activating maps. You can either individually click on them in the menu, or you can hit Control F2 to bring up the map prompt and type in the map number, which we have listed on the website for most Tracons. And in maps, whenever you hit the maps button, it'll pop up with a bar full of maps that you can select from. The GeoMaps tab here, button on the right, displays all the available geographic maps, and you can enter the map numbers for each of those fields below to pull up anything you may need. And the current tab lets you know what maps are currently open on the scope. Moving on, all the weather buttons here are currently not simulated, although hopefully in recent time those will become fully simulated. Moving into the bright tab, this is where most people make a lot of changes with their scope. Map A will control most things like primary base maps like shown here, while Map B generally will cover maybe quick reference things that you may not need all the time, like MVAs, MOAs, lots of other things, although it would appear that the MVAs are on the main map flow in this specific file. Actually, looks like everything is for the minute. We'll go and close those off. And back into brightness. DCB changes the brightness of your display bar at the top. Map A and Map B have been talked about. You can set these however you like. Generally, I run them darker, or my Map A darker and then my Map B brighter, because my Map A, generally, I need to spend more time looking at, so eventually the picture of it will become more visible in your background vision, while your map B is something you need to quick reference, whether it be MVA for low flying aircraft or any other sort of deal. Let's see, I need some more aircraft, so we'll go and let the file run for a second here. Back into brightness, the list brightness here, LST, will control the brightness of all your lists on the scope. FDB will control the brightness of any data tags that are currently tracked by you or are highlighted, which is when you click them with the middle mouse button, and that turns them a blue color. When you do that, they're listed as full data blocks and their brightness is controlled as so. Go and hand this track to local here so we can talk about other fields. The position symbol is the symbol in the middle of the aircraft track that you can change the brightness of. LDB or limited data blocks, which I'll go ahead and take the handoff there for Brickyard 3608 on local control, and I'll show an example of that. So Brickyard 3608, say they're not in our area of control, they're just a, zeroed out block like that. It'll show their scratch pad and then altitude or speed depending on the way a specific place is configured. So in Wichita's case, it'll show the altitude and the scratch pad or destination fixes, like so. And the LDB brightness changes how bright those tags are, and that includes their position symbol. Now we'll get into something called quick looking, which is when you input a command that'll automatically bring up tracks for a scope that you type in. In this case, we want to quick look the local scope, or L. So in order to do that, we'll hit multifunction or your F7 key, multifunction key Q, and then L, enter, and that'll open up the data tag for local control. In this case, it'll show up as green. If you middle click it, it'll become a full data block and you'll be able to adjust it. But whenever it's quick look like that, it falls under OTH, or the other set. So you can change the brightness of that just like for your limited data blocks. Moving into tools, there's many different tools in STARS, the most basic of which that you'll probably start using in your first couple sessions until you get more familiar with vectoring is the range bearing line tool. It's activated using *T and then clicking a location or entering an aircraft's ID to slew it. So in this case, we'll do *T KICT to put a bearing line on Wichita, and we can type Brickyard 3608, and it'll attach to his aircraft, or we could click the track and it'll attach to that aircraft. In the tools brightness, we'll change both the brightness of that line and the range bearing text, as well as we'll go and get into this now, PTLs, or the stingers, which you can see here are run out. It goes in increments of minutes. So a 0.5 PTL, which is most common in most Tracons, is half a minute. And you can see whenever I adjust the brightness of tools, that stinger will get brighter or darker. Moving into our next field, RR, which stands for range rings, can be adjusted here. They can be turned off or adjusted as bright as you would like to fit your scope. Generally, I keep them just subtly brighter than my map A set, and they're up sort of as a reference. The beacon brightness set here doesn't really carry much functionality anymore, as it's primarily associated with the multi and single site modes of radar, but those are not simulated in CRC due to them being fairly deprecated with real world, although they do have some uses in surveillance approaches and other things that are currently not simulated at this time. PRI controls the brightness of your primary targets. They can be turned off or brightened up. And HST controls the brightness of the trails behind the aircraft. That covers the basics of brightness control. So moving into character size, which is most important for a lot of people, because sometimes font size 2, which is the default, is just too large for some displays. In which case you can click on whatever character size field you want, and you can scroll it to a minimum size of 0 or a maximum size of 6. Generally on my display, I like to keep it at 2, but it's up to controller preference. Oh, I did miss one thing in bright. CMP, or compass, controls the brightness of the outer scope compass. While some people do use this as a quick reference for headings, I generally recommend to turn it off so you don't use it as a crutch or begin to rely on it, but to each their own. Moving on to pref sets. In this case, I've already saved two. Oh, that's local controls pref set, but it'll still work the same. Let's say we get our scope set up how we like it, and we want to make a change or save a change. In this case, bring the distance out to 50 miles or whatever other thing you change on your scope. You can place it however you like, then go into prefsets, hit save as, and type the name of whatever you want the prefset to be. In this case, we'll say radar. It's gone into my slot as prefset 3. So let's say I'm working local control and I want to assume a radar position. I'll hit the insert key to bring up prefsets and 3 to open up my radar prefset. The system status area filter, as shown here, will control the fields listed inside the system status area in the top left by default. All the fields here control different things. Most of the time, I recommend keeping everything on except for the airport field, because generally the airport field isn't necessary running some Tracons where you'll want all aircraft to be on the same altimeter for separation purposes. And generally, depending on if your Tracon supports AV on untracked VFR aircraft, you may want to turn off the codes field as well if you're going to select a certain beacon code. In this case, we'll go ahead and tell Turbo 7-1 in the corner of the airspace to squawk VFR. And in this case, you'll see he's squawking 1200 when we click on him, and his position symbol is a V for VFR. And this is not at all Tracon. Some will show up just like all the other aircraft squawking random codes. Untracked, it'll show up as an asterisk. At Tracons like that, this is where you get into the beacon select cam control. So you'll use multifunction or F7B and then type 12 to select the 1200 code block. So let's see, Turbo 7-3 will squawk 1203. In this case, he's squawking a code inside that 12 block, and he's untracked, so he'll show up as a selected beacon code, meaning he's probably doing some sort of special VFR operation. And you'll see when you beacon select codes, if you don't have that code field turned off, they'll show up under your radar site mode and scope current configuration and status. GI, or general information text, can be used by Tracon or local controllers alike to set general information items in their system status areas, such as current ATIS information, runway configs, and other things. There are 9 different general information fields. In order to put text in the main general information field, you'll type multifunction or F7S, and then a letter corresponding to the current ATIS code will say alpha, and then type a message. In this case, we'll say north vis for visual. And you'll see under the time and current altimeter setting, you'll see A on the left for information alpha, then north visuals. And you can hide or show general information text in this menu here. The shift menu contains some basic assets of stars that may or may not be useful. It just depends on your preferences. History here, when you click on it and scroll, it'll adjust the length of your history trails. When working zoomed out scopes, I usually prefer to keep it at 6 or 7, just to have a better picture of where tracks are going over a longer period of time. The DCB location buttons will adjust the location of your DCB as you see fit. And the PTL section will adjust the length of the track lines on your aircraft. PTO length goes in increments of minutes and half minutes, and PTO own will only put them on tracks that you currently own, while PTO all will put them on all associated tracks. That covers the shift menu. Now we'll begin to talk about some other functions of stars. Now, let's go and have that aircraft picker at 3608 fly on about a 220 heading. And United 672 also on a 220 heading. Here we'll get into some of the tools that can be shown. UPS 672 here in the top middle of the scope. Go and draw a ring around him. Is right now on a converging course with this on track target. Now, in this case, it appears as though they're not going to hit, but if you want to make sure, if you hit the end key, you'll see in your preview area something that says min. And what you can do there is click one aircraft and a second aircraft, and it will show two long lines that will end at triangles, and the closest that those two aircraft will get together at any given point. So in this case, UPS 672 and this 3673 beacon code AC 3938 will, at a minimum, be 3.5 miles apart and diverging. Now we'll say AC 3938 has inadvertently turned to a 050 heading. In this case, these aircraft will no longer be 3 miles apart, so you'll have to ensure through some way, whether it's watching the targets, that they'll achieve a secondary method of separation, such as divergence or other. In this case, they're pretty locked together, so you'll want to issue a traffic alert. And in this case, this will be what happens when you have a collision alert. If you want to put a ball on an aircraft showing 3 miles of separation, you may do so using *J and then slewing the aircraft that you wish to have that ring on. The same can be said if you want a cone extending out from the aircraft to a certain distance using *P and then an integer or any number, and then slewing the aircraft, and it'll show a cone or a ball with that specified mileage. In order to clear a ball or a cone, we'll just do either *J or *P independently and slew those tracks. If you want to remove them for all aircraft, you can type ***, then P or J, hit enter, and it'll disappear for all aircraft. Now we'll talk about pointouts. In stars, pointouts will show up by a target flash to your scope with a yellow PO to indicate pointout. if I can remember what position to point out to. Well, in the meantime, while I look at that, we'll go over how it looks whenever you point out an aircraft to a receiving sector. In this case, we'll initiate a point out to local control. And we'll see what it looks like when they accept it. So AC 3938, you'll type the position ID, then asterisk, and slew the target. And you'll notice it says point out, and then the position they're being pointed out to. If the receiving controller has decided to accept your point out, PO will begin to flash in the data block in white, advising you that the point out has been approved, and then it will disappear. A future addition to CRC STARS will be that the point out will eventually remain and show how many sectors the aircraft has been pointed out to. If you're to point out to the receiving sector and they hit the U key and click the aircraft, UN unable, it'll flash UN advising that the point out has been unabled or not approved. If you point out to a sector and they decide that they require track control of the aircraft, they will hit the asterisk key twice or the handoff button and click that aircraft and it'll show as a completed handoff. Now in this case, if a controller is to point out to you, you'll see that aircraft flash yellow on your scope, indicating that the aircraft is being pointed out to you. If you slew it, it'll show in yellow, advising you that the point out has been approved. If a aircraft is pointed out to you and you decide that you cannot accept the point out, hit UN and slew the aircraft and it will go back to its previous status. And if an aircraft is pointed out to you and you require track control, in this case 2 aircraft are coming together, asterisk slew, or you can hit the handoff key F5 and slew, and it'll complete the handoff. That concludes point outs. And that generally is most of the functionality that you'll need for STARS in terms of basic functionality. Now let's get into VFR aircraft and flight plans. We'll start with Kanza 25 over in the distance there. They're over McConnell Air Force Base at the minute squawking VFR. Let's say they call up on our frequency for flight following. Okay, those two are coming together. So Kanza 25. Wichita approach. Kanza 25 over McConnell Air Force Base is a Boeing 767-200. Request flight following to Wichita. In this case, they've called up, so we'll type in Kanza 25 to start their flight plan, and then we'll type the destination airport they want to go to, which is ICT. Their aircraft type in the next line, which is 762. And if you are unable to obtain an aircraft type or they don't give one, generally you want to default to the non-RNAV equivalent for that aircraft, in this case Slant Whiskey, and then you can put in an altitude in the 4th line. This will spit out a squawk code, which you can then have the aircraft squawk, and they should auto-acquire on your scope. There he is. Kanza 25 is now squawking. Now we'll get into abbreviated flight plans. So we'll get into Medevac 191 Whiskey Bravo. So LN 191 Whiskey Bravo. We'll say once practice approaches at Wichita, and we've received his request, but we need a moment to uh, process it, or we just want to go ahead and put in his request immediately. So we'll say he wants the visual approach to runway 1 left, or an ILS approach for the purpose of making sense. So we'll type in his call sign, his aircraft type, which in this case is a King Air, and then in the second line, we'll put his aircraft type instead of his destination. And the third line, we'll put a delta key or the tilde with the scratch pad, in this case, IL. It's not going to work because he's already got an IFR flight plan on file, so it's not going to work, but usually it'll spit out a squawk code, and whenever they squawk that assigned code, they'll show up with the scratch pad in the data block. So that covers abbreviated flight plans and their usages. Now we'll talk about completing handoffs. This is the most common function you'll use in STARS. In order to initiate a handoff, you will type the sector ID as shown in your controller list. In this case, we'll do Stillwater Low for cons at 25. So we'll hit C62 for center. And then you'll see the sector it's flashing to in the second line of the data block. And then once they accept it, it'll begin to flash. Once it flashes like that and the position symbol changes, that constitutes completion of the handoff, and you can transfer comms as soon as practicable. If an aircraft is being handed off to you, you will see the tag flashing, and in the second line, the scope that is handing the tag to you. Once you accept it, it'll show in white. Scratch pads and stars. There are two main scratch pads, the primary of which is 3 characters and can be accessed using multifunction Y or by typing any combination of 2 to 3 letters and slewing the aircraft. So in this case, we'll say cons at 25 wants the ILS to runway 1 left, so we'll put an IL, and it'll flash there in the second line of his data block. If there's some additional information that we need to put in, like missed approach instructions, we can put that in the secondary scratch pad by prefixing text with a plus. So in this case, we'll give a climb out instruction of runway heading. So we'll type plus RH, slew him, and the secondary scratch pad will flash in the second line of the data block as well as the ILS for 1 left. In this case, we'll say Kanza 25 is having an emergency. If he squawks 7700, it'll show up in your system status area and in line 0 of the data block, and that goes for radio failure and any other possible conditions. This covers the basics of STARS configuration and functions of the scope. Additional information such as how to move the different lists or your preview area around the scope can be found in the virtual NAS documentation. I hope this is helpful to anyone who's watched the video. If there are any questions, they can be left in the comments or sent as a DM to me or any other ZKC training staff on Discord. Good luck in your training.